on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. So just in a couple of seconds, that should be sorted. And then we'll get started with this week's Master Your live show. And let me just share my screen a little bit better so you can both see me and Greg on the screen simultaneously. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Master Your Exit live show powered by The Big Exit. My name is Lynn, and together with Graham, I'll be your host for today. On this Master Your Exit live show, we bring you practical insights, expert interviews, and tools to help small business owners like yourself to prepare for your big exit. This show airs every Tuesday at 7 a.m. PST, that's in Los Angeles, at 10 a.m. EST, that's in New York, 3 p.m. GMT, that's in London, and 4 p.m. CET, that's in Brussels. We keep every show pretty short, pretty casual, pretty simple, not more than 30 minutes maximum. And if you're tuning in on our YouTube channel or on our LinkedIn channel, welcome. If you joined us live here in our virtual studio on Zoom, that's really awesome as well. You can drop all your exit questions in our studio chat, and we'll be more than happy to answer them here live on the show today. Now, if you're catching this episode a little bit later, you can find more episodes of the show, or all of the episodes basically of the show, on our website at thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, or you can listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, on today's show, we're diving into the topic of personal brand building. Now, we are planning to have a very insightful discussion on the pros and the cons on having a personal brand as a business owner, and the impact of having a personal brand when you are preparing your business for an exit. I feel, Graham, this is a topic we could talk about for hours. We're going to keep it short and simple as promised, but I'd love to have, like a conversation specifically around this topic. And when I made the suggestion earlier on today to you to talk about this specific topic, the topic of personal branding for business owners, you were like, yeah, there's just so much we can dive into. So any first thoughts that you would love to share with the audience to crack open the discussion, and then we'll kind of like have a flowy conversation sharing our experiences with our audience.
Yeah, Lynn, thanks. Great to be here again. And I think, yeah, it's just such a broad topic in many ways. You know, when you talk about personal brand and the impact on business and selling your business, so there's so many different layers to this. But at the heart of it, I don't like to use the word personal brand. It's more around like letting a window into who you are as an individual. Because at the end of the day, if you're a business owner, people do business with people. And the more you can build trust and show your authentic self and show what you're really about, I think that's absolutely critical. And I think more than anything else, there can't be a disconnect between what your personal brand is, whether it's online or what have you, and who you really are as a person. So there's so many different layers, from what does it mean from valuation to what does it mean to doing a deal that we can tackle. But yeah, my view is personal brand is just about showing to others who you are as an individual, and through that building trust and rapport, either to grow your business or do a deal or whatever the case might be. So yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, what I see today, if you're living a little bit in the online space, which I think most of us do to a certain extent, we're branding ourselves and our businesses on social media channels, whether you're on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or even Pinterest or LinkedIn or wherever you hang out as a human being. Personal branding is a topic that's it has become a pretty big thing also for business owners. I think, like 15 years ago, the only people that had personal brands were kind of like celebrities. right? Like authors and actors and all these kinds of
Mhm.
people. But over the last decade at least, personal branding has moved into the space of entrepreneurship as well, where we see a lot of entrepreneurs becoming entrepreneurs or becoming more successful entrepreneurs by building a personal brand to some extent on social media. So that's been a trend that's been going on for quite a while now. Um, which, as you're saying, like it's really good to show who you are as a human being. Yet, what we see from a business perspective is that there's a lot of conversation around like personal branding marketing or founder-led marketing. I also see that term popping up quite a
Mm,
lot, where the founder slash entrepreneur is kind of the marketing channel for the business.
mm,
And there's a lot of pros that go to that, where you say, like, this is a great way to be building trust with your audience, with potential suppliers, with, everybody in your ecosystem, which it absolutely is. Do you see other benefits of building, this personal brand as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a business owner, before maybe diving into the cons of doing that?
I think, at the end of the day, the world is a noisy place, and the world of social media and the world of advertising and marketing and all of that sort of stuff is very, very noisy. So, again, people connect first and foremost with other people, people who share their ideals, their value systems, people who are interesting, a bunch of different things, So kind of leaning into that, even some of the platforms that we use to get out there, LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn, the algorithm promotes conversations amongst people. If any of you who run a business and try to run a business account on LinkedIn, I think the reach is like 1/10 or 1/20. So those are some practical examples where actually getting out there as an individual can really have a benefit. And I think particularly in the early stages of building a business, that is super, super, super important. We're not talking about being celebrity. I think there's a big difference between what we talk about in terms of personal branding and celebrity branding. If you're Kim Kardashian and you launch a range, you've already got millions and millions of eyeballs on you. So I don't think we're talking that for me is almost more celebrity than personal brand, and those individuals are very successful at leveraging that. But I think the people we're talking to is people like you and me, ordinary business owners. You're like, well, how about putting themselves out there? Can they benefit their business? And I think, other benefits, it makes you relatable. One of the reasons a lot of people want to do business with small businesses is because they're sick and tired of talking to, a chatbot when they're trying to solve a simple query on their account, or they've got a complaint and they want access to the founder of the business. So I think it creates connection between you and your clients. I guess maybe segueing into the next part of the conversation, Lynn, is there's kind of a bit of a dichotomy or sort of a negative to that, is that if you want your business to be sellable, everyone will tell you, how do you remove owner dependence? How do you make the business less dependent on you? And I don't think those two are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think as the
Let's
business
let's dive into
grows,
that. I think, yeah,
yeah,
let's dive into that a little bit more. I think one of the things that I came to realize, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. Definitely the first few years, I didn't really build a personal brand, yet I had a very successful consultancy business. So that to say
yeah,
that you can have a really successful business without having a personal brand, that's one thing. After that, I really started leveraging my personal brand as well, which I think, as you were saying correctly, in the early days of your business is such a powerful marketing strategy, because people
mhm,
do business with other people, right? And
yeah,
when in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, it's everything is just still so early. You as the founder are
mm,
probably the one that are, you're bringing in the customers, you're helping the customers, you're serving the customers. You've got all these like little hats on your
that you're
head,
wearing. Yeah.
literally, and doing all of the things and being a jack of all trade, and basically being, like the personal brand and the face builds a lot of trust and momentum for your business in the
Mm,
early days. When it comes down to taking your business to the next level and maybe getting investors on board, or maybe exiting or selling parts of your business, like further down the line, which is a process that I have gone through as well, I
mm,
noticed that having just solely a personal brand really backfired when I started having conversations with investors. So before
Yeah.
maybe sharing my own experience around that, I'd love to, have your expert take on this. Like what happens with the personal branding part once you're like further into the maturity phases of your business and you're thinking of selling or getting investors on board.
Yeah, I mean, there is a, if if we could kind of predict when that magical crossover point is from shifting from purely a personal brand business to a business, like we would all be billionaires, right? But I think that's kind of part of the challenge is when a business gets to a certain size or when it becomes attractive to a potential acquirer. Yeah, they want to know that even when you step away as that owner or that brand, that business can continue to thrive and grow and all of those sorts of things. Okay, so that's that kind of inflection point, and you spot on, Lynn. Is you can have earnouts, you can have like retention periods and all of that, but even that comes to an end. Okay, so if an investor is going to buy a business, they want to know what does that succession look like. At very least, they want to know what does that roadmap look like, moving from Lynn de Power Consulting to the big exit. Okay, to use an example. I'll use another analogy, like in the world of sports, for argument's sake. Maybe an equivalent of a personal brand would be your favorite player or your star player on a particular team. They might play. Get my sports mixed up. They might play basketball for the New York Knicks. I think that's a basketball team. But if they suddenly had to go, to the Philadelphia team, do you follow the star player or do you continue to support your team? So I think it's possible to have both, but there has to be that transition. And I think it's about that intentionality around being clear around saying, hey, I accept that this business is bigger than me. Everyone sees that sports person who thinks that they're bigger than the sport. Okay. Usually what ends up happening is they end up falling over at some point. And it's the same in business. I think it's a recognition that you are not bigger than your business. And demonstrating that thought process is more important than the brand and the individual itself. I'll use one last example. I mean, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay. Everybody knows who Colonel Sanders was. I don't know. I think he was real. Okay. Colonel Sanders for years was the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And you'll see of late, yeah, they're still in the diagrams of that, but nobody really talks about Colonel Sanders anymore. That business over time has kind of moved away from that. He's still part and parcel of the founding story and the heritage and everything of that business. But it's not about Colonel Sanders fried chicken anymore. It's about KFC. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's just some sort of perspective on that.
I mean, it's a great example. Like I speak to business owners in the space of, agencies, knowledge businesses, coaches,
Mm.
mentors, public speakers, like people who have built really successful businesses, but a lot of it is around themselves and their personality. And
Yeah.
I'm part of masterminds where these people hang out as well. And we have a lot of conversations around this. And one of the things that I see happening over and over and over again is um, on one side, there's the personal branding thing, which is the marketing piece of the business, right? You are the face, you're
Mm.
doing the webinars, just like we are doing this show today, right? It's our
Yeah.
faces that are on there. There's that part, which is challenging for somebody who would potentially buy your business, I think, because they'll be like, but wait a minute, what if Lynn is no longer doing these Master Your Exit live shows, then who's going to do them? And if it's going to be
Yeah.
somebody else, is it going to be equally good? Obviously not, for
Mm.
sure. Right? But that's what a business buyer will wonder, right? That's
Yeah.
that part. But then there's also what I see a lot with business owners who run knowledge-based businesses, whether it's agencies or consulting firms or coaching businesses, membership sites, all of these things, is a lot of these business owners are also still even involved in actually doing the services and doing the
Mm,
offers. They are still consulting. They are still teaching. They are still, like writing the book that gets sold within this business. They're
mm,
still so heavily involved into the delivery of the service as
mm.
well. And that creates another layer of challenge from the perspective of a business buyer, because all of a sudden it's not only about, can this new person do the Master Your Exit live show as good as the owner can do it?
Yeah.
That's one thing to tackle and a risk for a business buyer. But also, hold on, wait a minute. If Lynn is doing
Mm.
the consultancy, even if she has coaches and consultants and whatever, but if she's still servicing, the high level clients, what happens if we buy this business and she's off on her yacht in the Caribbean or something like that? So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that, like owner independence and transferability of that whole personal branding thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I still get it with our business with Bizval today. Is sometimes you get a client and they're like, "Oh, Graham, I thought you were going to do my evaluation. You were going to be consulting, and it's someone in my team who's doing that." So it doesn't happen that often, but it does still happen. Okay, and so I think, yeah, how you position and how you set is important. I mean, I'll just use another example. I think where guys get it right is where they're able to take that secret sauce, put it in a recipe bottle so that you can repeat and scale it without losing the essence of, what your personal brand represents. I think people who've done it well, and he's no longer with us, but somebody like Stephen Covey. When you talk about the 7 habits of highly effective people, yes, he was an author and a researcher and all of that, but everybody knows, the Eisenhower matrix or the Stephen Covey matrix. So taking those concepts and being able to put them in a way that they're repeatable, and that is super, super important. Um, and I think, we talk about systemizing a business to make it more valuable and more scalable. And I think how you systemize a business and how you connect that to kind of removing owner dependency is kind of where the magic happens. So systemizing a business doesn't mean that you have to automate everything. It doesn't mean that you need an algorithm to do anything. Systemizing a business could mean that you've got people in your business who trained in your value sets and your ethos and all of that, who can continue and deliver that same experience for your customers when you're not there. It could mean the way that you do your marketing and you connect and the style of the show. Take something like I think was it the Tonight Show? Okay, where the longtime host went and then Trevor Noah came in. Initially, it was kind of, oh, this is not the Tonight Show anymore, but before long, he created, but it still had the style of the Tonight Show. There was still something edgy and what have you about that show. And I think for me, it's not as black and white as, oh, Lynn can no longer be involved in the big exit or Graham can't. It's about actually creating a system that delivers that unique experience, that you keep the core DNA. And that's where storytelling and the history of a business and all of that becomes really, really important. I think what starts to happen over time, and I'll use that Colonel Sanders example again, is that the founder moves to being part of the DNA and the origin story of the business, as opposed to be actively involved in the business. And that's a nice way, because often owners don't want to lose that legacy. That's a very effective way to actually make that transition,
Yeah.
and have that embedded in the business with, getting the best of both worlds, so to speak. And then even, making guest appearances. When you think of Apple today, whether you like him or hate him, you still think of Steve Jobs. When you think of Tesla, people still think of Elon Musk. So, those founders and those charismatic individuals never leave. But, Steve Jobs hasn't been around for the last 10, 15 years, yet Apple is still a thriving business and he's still associated with that. But it doesn't impact on their results today. So I'm waffling on now, but I like to use these kind of examples because I think you've got to make it real. It's easy to say, oh, remove owner dependence and put a system in. But to most business owners, that means nothing. You've got to think, how do I retain my legacy and my involvement, while making sure that the business is not dependent on me? That for me is the sort of key question.
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack here, and I feel like we could have another 3 hours of conversation. We have a couple of blog posts on our website. So if you go to thebigexit.co/blog, you'll find probably about 4 or 5 blog posts specifically around personal branding and company branding and how you can make the shift in a gentle, slow way that will make your business more transferable if you're ever planning on selling it. Or even if you're, as an owner, are planning on maybe, taking a 6 month sabbatical and you still want your business to continue rocking and rolling. And there's just in what you were saying, Graham, there's so many things to unpack where I feel I don't really have the time to do that today. But one of the things that stood
Mm.
out for me that you were saying is, can you bottle up your magic as the owner in how you get the job done for your clients? And can you
Yeah.
bottle that up and then kind of have your team drink from that same bottle and get the same results for your clients? And I often tend to say, like, there is a way of how you do things that gets the job done for your clients in a certain way. And if you can figure out that thing, and I call it a framework or a step-by-step approach or whatever you want to call it, if you can like define that thing and start, like really truly understanding the thing and the process that gets the results for the clients. Once you know
Yeah.
that, you can teach other people that same
Mm.
approach and that same framework, which will get the same or even better results for your clients. And I think that's one of the things, if you're still very heavily involved in doing the actual work for your clients, that's the first step you need to. You were saying as well, Greg, doing the valuations anymore. You have people in
Yeah.
your team who do the valuations, and the only way you could get to that point is by knowing how you did them to an extent that the clients were really happy, and then teaching other people to do that in a very similar way or even in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, just use a very practical example in our business is when I had to start making the shift, and we probably made it a year and a half ago when we started to hire a team to do a lot of these things, is initially I would maybe be on the call for 5 or 10 minutes when we're engaging a client and do a bit of an introduction, make sure the client knows I'm there, and then kind of leave the door open that if there were any follow-up questions, my number was on speed dial or my email, they could contact us. Okay. In time, that actually starts to undermine your team, though, when you do that. Okay. So, but that was more just actually a confidence thing for me as a founder or an owner rather than actually the client wanting that, to be quite frank. And we did that for a couple of weeks, and then I stepped back completely. But the simple, practical things is, yeah, my number is available on the website. If somebody wants to get hold of me as the founder of the business, they can. My email address is available. Now, it seems counterintuitive in a world like today where, like, you got to go through layers to, you can't speak to the owner or the CEO or whatever. So I think those are sort of very practical things that you can do. Half the problem is not your clients, it's you as the owner who gets stuck thinking that you need to be involved. And then secondly is give your clients a mechanism, if that brand is important, to know that you're accessible in some sort of way. It doesn't need to be your phone number, but it needs to be a way. It might be commenting on LinkedIn posts. It might be doing some of those things. So those are just kind of
Fully
two
agree.
insights, I guess, that I could add.
Fully agree. And I love that little example that you're giving of like how you did the valuations first all by yourself, then you got your team involved, and you were still a little bit hanging around, making sure that mostly you felt comfortable with what your team was doing, although they
Okay.
seemed really capable from the beginning, but just for you to feel comfortable with that. And once you were like, oh, hold on a minute, Steven's doing a great job, like
Much
I
better
don't
job
need
than
to.
me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to be here anymore. And that is so recognizable for me because I remember when I was still running the business school in Belgium, like we had a high-end offer where I was doing the coaching. So people would sign up to our educational platform, but if they were willing to pay an extra amount, they got access to me and I was one-on-one coaching them. And I
Yeah.
always said, like, oh, I can't scale this because I'm the best coach around. No one can do it like me. No one can do it as good as me. People want me to be their coach. I was telling myself all these stories, which were very ego flattering for sure, but it wasn't really helping my business move forward. And it took me probably about 2 years before I kind of convinced myself that maybe other
Yeah.
people could do this as well. And that's when I
Mm.
started training coaches in our methodology and letting them do the coaching for our clients. And it turned out, and it was painful for me, it turned out
Mm.
our clients loved them. Like they loved them way
Yeah.
better than they loved me. But it's just incredible. I mean, for me, it has always been an example. I mean, it's humbling. That's one thing, which is a learning experience as well for a business owner. It's humbling, but I also came to realize that there were so many stories I told myself of why it could not be done that it
Mm.
basically put our scaling opportunities on hold for 2 years only because in my own head, I believed I
Mm.
couldn't give this to anybody else,
Yeah.
right?
No, we
And
become our own biggest blockers, right?
become our
And
own biggest blockers, exactly. And I think like to kind of wrap this up when we're talking about personal branding, right? Like there's the marketing piece, there's the delivery piece, there's a lot to unpack there. If you're still a business owner who's doing, like the delivery of the service to your clients, just be aware that from a transferability of being able to sell your business at some point, you might think of some kind of a strategy where you take yourself out of those day-to-day delivery activities. That's one thing. And from the marketing side, that's probably step number two, I would say, that if you are the one that is bringing in all the leads and all the clients and closing all of the deals, and there's basically nobody else on your team that is doing that, then probably your second step would be to start thinking to be removing yourself from your marketing for your company as well. So this could be, for example, you not being the only person on your podcast, but maybe having
yeah.
some of your coaches there or your team members that are hosting your podcast rather than you doing it, or maybe not you showing up on all of the webinars or not you doing all of the sales calls, but having, like your team members starting to do the sales calls and stuff like that. So, depending on where you are with your business, step one would be to slowly take yourself out of the delivery part, although you might believe that that might be a challenge and your clients actually want you. And secondly, to remove yourself from the marketing and the branding part and at least start building a company brand as well and not just a personal brand. Anything, I mean, Graham, I feel like we can talk about this for another 3 hours, right? I said this before.
Len,
Anything you would
I
like
think
to
this
add
is
to that?
it's such an important topic. I think we're going to have to kind of break it down and maybe have a few subsections on this. I think you hit the nail on the head. Moving from personal brand to business brand is a journey. There's all these different steps, and I think that might be a nice way to actually tackle this over the next few weeks. Is break it down into how do you make each of those different shifts along the way. But um, yeah, obviously something I could speak for hours on and very passionate about. So thank you, and yeah, look forward to the next session next week.
Yeah, 100%. Me too. And it feels exciting to be sharing our own journeys as well as business owners, building a business that is transferable and that is sellable and having to deal with a lot of the things that any small business owner deals with, trying to, like create a business that's a little bit more independent from you as the owner. And you're going through the journey, I'm going through the journey, our audience is
Mhm.
going to the journey. So there's just so much we can just share and learn from each other. So yeah, really looking forward to that, having a few more topics covering in the Master Your Exit live show on this very specific item on personal branding and company branding. So thank you so much, Graham.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thanks to the listeners.
Awesome. Well, that was a wrap for this week's episode of the Master Your Exit live show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have learned some valuable insights to help you prepare for your big exit. Remember, you can catch the replay of this episode and any other of the episodes on our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, we also love to hear from you. Send in your exit questions before next week's show by heading over to thebigexit.co/master your exit sign up. You can sign up there and send us your exit questions so we can answer them on future episodes. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7 a.m. PST in LA, 10 a.m. EST in New York, 3 p.m. GMT in London, or 4 p.m. CET in Brussels, with more tips, expert interviews, and tools to help you master your exit. Until then, keep building, keep preparing, and we'll see you next week. Thank you